I call to order the special session of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Tarpon Springs on Wednesday, November 8th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Vaticius.
Here.
Vice Mayor Lunt.
Here.
Commissioner Eisner.
Here.
Commissioner Kulyas.
Here.
Commissioner Kulianis.
Okay, tonight's special session is for the final report from Carlton Fields, our special counsel, concerning the matter of Anclote Harbor Apartments project. But before we get to that, we have public comments on anything that's not on the agenda. If anyone here has any comments on anything that's not on the agenda, please come forward.
Good evening, Peter Delakis, 514 Ashland Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to be brief in some regards, but as always, I'd like to read something. This will be Psalm 31. In you, O Lord, I have taken refuge. Let me never be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me, come quickly to my rescue, to be my rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. Since you are my rock and my fortress, for the sake of your name, lead and guide me. Free me from the trap that is set for me, for you are my refuge. Into your hands I commit my spirit. Redeem me, O Lord, the God of truth. I hate those who cling to worthless idols. I trust in the Lord. I will be glad and rejoice in your love, for you saw my affliction and knew the anguish of my soul. You have not handed me over to the enemy, but have set my feet in a spacious place. So, I want to follow up a little bit about what I kind of talked about last night about Live Local. So, as I mentioned, I read some stuff, but just to recap, the act mandates that local governments authorize the development of multifamily rentals on sites that are zoned as mixed use, residential, commercial, or industrial if at least 40% of the residential units in a proposed multifamily development will be, for a period of at least 30 years, be affordable to individuals making up to 120% of the local area median income. It also orders municipalities apply the highest allowed density for proposed multifamily developments. These two rules are meant to eliminate one of the biggest hurdles cities, counties, and developers face when trying to increase affordable housing in communities. What's that? Us pesky neighborhood opposition. The law allows localities to move forward with projects while skipping the loud and sometimes disruptive public meetings that hold up and sometimes kill projects. Developers will still need to meet local regulations, and residents will still get a say on issues like landscaping, setbacks, and parking standards. Yeah, whoopee. But another part in this article that I wanted to bring forth is how this is funded. So on the front page here, it says a statewide Affordable Housing Act backed by more than $700 million can be a much needed infusion for a project. So they do it through what they call the State Department Incentive Loan Program. That's $259 million. That's the SAIL program. And then what I mentioned last night was the SHIP, which is the State Housing Initiative Partnership, got $252 million. Basically, these provide housing on a rental basis. The Savannah Cove, I think, was partly funded with the SAIL program. Why not, and this is maybe out of the box, but instead of giving that $700 million to developers through tax credits and breaks and actual and direct dollar incentives to people directly through a low interest or a low grant program, they apply $50,000, $75,000. You could probably do, I didn't do the math, but quite a number of loans to get people to own houses. Home ownership is what keeps people involved in their neighborhoods, and it gives them a stake in equity. You rent, you have no equity. You can't pass wealth on. You can't pass on what your assets grow. So we can solve a number of problems by helping people directly instead of giving money to developers all the time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other public comments of anyone here in attendance on anything that's not on the agenda? Mr. Maury, are there any remote access comments on anything that's not on the agenda?
If anyone online would like to talk on this item, please raise your hand to be allowed in. We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay. Ms. Jacobs, we don't have anything of this type of a comment, is that correct?
Not for this.
Okay, all right. Let's move on to item 1, which is the special counsel's final report to the Board of Commissioners. Mr. Schwartz and his team is here from Carlton Fields. It's been about 10 months since we got started on this. The first, it wasn't a formal meeting, but the first official meeting was the work session on January 17th after Carlton Fields was selected as the special counsel. And also we passed a resolution 2023-09 the following week, which basically memorialized the issues or the comments in the work session into a more formal scope of services. Now we have the final report, and and it's dated November 1st. That states the investigation was limited to only the Anclote Harbor Apartments. That was the agreement that we made at the workshop, and also memorialized in the resolution 2023-09. And the scope was limited to communication interplay by those involved in the project, 2019 ordinances that modified the Land Development Code, the real or perceived conflicts of interest in self-dealing, and then also related ancillary issues. And the report also offers 5 recommendations with regard to procedures and policy changes, which is something that we had all hoped that we would get out of the report as a minimum. At the end of this meeting, before I turn it over to Mr. Schwartz to introduce his team, at the end of the meeting, there's an expectation that we accept the report and its findings based on the information and the interviews that took place that Carlton Fields had in order to base the report on. And as far as the recommendations, it would be up to the commission, of course, but I'm not sure that we would have the time nor have thought everything through based on what we hear tonight in order to adopt the recommendations. I would think that that would be for a later date as well. So Mr. Schwartz, if you could come forward and introduce your team, and then we'll go from there.
Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners, thank you for the invitation to attend tonight. With me, my team is Ken Tinkler, who's a partner in our local government group at Carlton Fields, and also Aaron Hoyle, who's in our white collar and internal investigations group along with me. And we are here tonight to formally proffer and present our official final report to the city for acceptance. We will be here, we're here to listen to the public comments and to address any questions that the commissioners may have, either based on the public comments or independently. There is no information that's not in the report, meaning what we found based on our interviews, our research, our review of documents, and our review of video meetings. Our findings are contained in the report, so we didn't make any, there are no findings that you'll hear from me tonight that are not in our report. Our recommendations came directly out of all those matters that I just discussed. Those are issues for you all to take up. If you'd like to, you don't have to. It's just our recommendations. That's probably worth a meeting in themselves. That's a lot to consider. But we're happy to address any questions that you all may have at the appropriate time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schwartz. What we're going to do is go to public comments first. The report's been out there. The public has had it as long as we have had it. And I'd like to ask if there's any public comments on the report from anyone that's in attendance tonight that's here. Okay. Mr. Maury, are there any remote access comments? Mr. Delakis, do you have a comment?
Well, I was just waiting to see if anybody else did.
If anyone online would like to talk on this item, please raise your hand to be allowed in.
Okay.
We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay. Ms. Jacobs, you do have one email that needs to be,
We do.
we're waiting for Mr. Delakis, okay.
Okay. Annie, do I have time? Ms. Marcus is willing to donate time, and in a sense, we're an affected party, so I would allow a little liberty. First off, any comments I make is not to refute the integrity of the report. It's just some questions I have and some of the answers and some of the documentation. So, as you know, it was mentioned 25 witnesses, 9 decline, 27,000 documents. So my first question is, why are we not seeing more documents as compared to just 8 or 9 in the exhibits? We'll get to more of that later. Page 2. On page II, did employees or agents of Morgan Group exert inappropriate pressure? They answered that with regards to Morgan Group. And let me find more of my comments. We're on page 14. Page 14. We found no evidence of outside influence on city staff to advance recommend the Anclote Harbor project. And I agree with the way they explain how the preliminary meetings, but it doesn't reference pressure from anybody else in the administration or the Board of Commissioners. Page 15, staff attempting. 15, staff attempting. I'm sorry, I'm trying to catch up to where my notes match up to this. Well, basically, during that time period, it keeps referencing the Pro-Development Board of Commissioners. And it keeps mentioning smart growth. And basically, smart growth isn't opening up the doors to every developer that comes in and changing things such that it's devised to the advantage of developers. As I mentioned, even in my opening comments tonight, developers, always getting it. And it was mentioned, page 16, here we go. Per witness, the Morgan Group was most interested in pursuing development options that would move the project forward quickly with minimal expense. Quickly and minimal expense. And then they talk about the notice of the project first comes through the TRC. I don't know, it was just, I understand they couldn't talk to certain witnesses, and I have to applaud Mr. Carr for speaking with them. And I understand we got things in there with regards to financial forms, and they weren't allowed to go any further. And again, I'm not alluding that anybody had any direct financial gain at the original. Maybe it was looking down the road. But I did have one other concern. And on page 22, it's under topic 3, real or perceived conflicts of interest. And it said the investigation could not substantiate any allegations of conflicts of interest, neither of witnesses facing allegations. Nonetheless, no witnesses alleging such conflicts or interests of self-dealing provided any evidence. And yet, I believe they did receive some evidence in that regard. And it would have involved interviewing some other people other than those that were on the list that were interviewed. I would like to say that from what they spoke about with regards to staff, they did what they were asked to do. But they knew the culture they were in and what they had to do, and within the bounds of processes, I believe they did that. But I have to say, I was at those February and January meetings at the BOC, and I've watched those P&Z meetings, and I saw Heather hem and haw about not trying to reveal it. It's in the notes, Mr. Vesey. They asked at the P&Z, it was a special, and even in the investigation says she was asked a direct question, but she didn't answer that. She went off onto some other thing about this would help make it easier for larger development projects to come into town, because that was the vision of that board. We have a new board, but now I have to say to the rest of us out here, it's important who we elect, so we don't have to be jumping back and forth between boards, because people in Tarpon want to keep their historic preservation and keep that small town influence and not being subject to the whims of developers that we are now going to be beseeched upon with the Live Local law. Thank you.
Are there any other individuals here that would have a public comment on this report? Mr. Wagonfor.
Thank you, Mayor. I wasn't going to get up and speak, but there were two things in the report that drew my interest a bit. One of them was the rather large and important number of people who refused to be interviewed for the report. This was not a court hearing. There was no subpoenas issued. Nobody was forced to testify. However, there are a number of people, and I'm sure you know who they are, that refused to participate in the interviews. And I think because of that, due to no fault of the attorneys doing the work, you have an incomplete report on your desk. The second thing is fairly simple. I think it's item number 4 in the recommendations, where there was some education recommended for the P&Z board members. And that kind of struck a bell with me when I served on the P&Z board. In fact, this is what led to my resignation from the P&Z board. There was an application that came before us. I discovered that there was a piece of the code, actually in the definition section, that made the project non-compliant. I asked my fellow board members to open their land development code to page whatever it was, and I think the only one who had the code with them was Mr. Delacus, and me, of course. I was embarrassed that the P&Z board members at that time came to that hearing so unprepared. So I heartily suggest that you implement recommendation number 4 and make sure the P&Z board has the education that it needs to do the job that you're asking them to do. That's all.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. Anita Protas, 901 Bayshore Drive. It's over. accept this report. Let's heal this community. Let's get going and making Tarpon a friendlier place than what it has been. People who did not want to be interviewed have a right. They don't want to get involved in all of this. It hasn't been pleasant. It hasn't been nice. It's been ugly. The time has come. You are the leaders of this community. We need to go on. We need to start taking care of Tarpon Springs. We need revenue in this city. We've spent a lot of money, useless, on things in this community, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you know what I mean, on reports, investigations, and other issues in the city. Let's get on with what we put you in office for. Let's be productive, accept this, and you can question this law firm all you want, but it's one of the best law firms in this part of the United States. You are not lawyers. None of us are. They've done a good job, don't question them, and let's go on and work for the city of Tarpon Springs. The time has come. This is it tonight. Accept this. They don't lie. They go in depth in their investigations, and let's stop all of this.
Okay. Is there anyone else? We went to Mr. Maury. Ms. Jacobs, you have one email to be read.
I do. This is from David Banther, 1418 Oleander Drive. I am very happy that the report exposed the truth that the wild, baseless, and false allegations alleged against myself and others by the members of the BOC have been proven to be false and baseless per the report. There are those that will say you and others declined to be interviewed. Why would I speak to someone hired by people that hate me and seek my destruction? If the tables were turned, would you have spoken to the special counsel? I don't think so. I have a very public and spotless 6-year record as a city commissioner and vice mayor. The record speaks for itself. From day one, this was a witch hunt propagated by Mayor Vaticiotis. He used $160,000 of taxpayers' dollars to try and punish his enemies with zero grounds to do so. For almost 2 years, this BOC has engaged in outright slander against myself and others and has done everything they can to attempt to hurt my business on Tarpon Avenue. They have attempted to hurt my family, my clients, and discolor my 6-year spotless record. It's time for this commission, specifically Vaticiotis and Eisner, to be held accountable for their actions. I have full faith that the court of law will do so with the many pending lawsuits and more to come. To all in the crowd tonight that continue to support Vaticiotis and Eisner, we see who you are. Do not seek my destruction in these chambers and then attempt to smile and wave to my wife and children around town. Don't forget the tables can and do turn very quickly.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and go to the commission. I'm going to start this off. I've just got a couple of brief things I want to say, and I suspect some of the other commissioners have got a lot more than what I'm going to say. First of all, I agree the report serves a purpose, and I think it answers one big question, which is something that this commission and the 2020 commission and also the 2022 commission where Mr. Koulianis was added, of whether there was anything that would be in this investigation that would cause this project to come back to the commission. I think that's real clear that there isn't anything based on what the report says, and I think that's a big question that was answered. I think from given that, we need to move forward and kind of get back to work to what we're supposed to be doing, and I think that was one of the main purposes of this report. Secondly, Mr. Schwartz, as far as bookkeeping and sort of thing, there's Mr. Dlakis referred to a lot of documents and the 27,000 documents and so forth. I know early on there was some discussion of the material being held in confidence until the report, the investigation was completed, and I assume that based on tonight and the acceptance of a report, if that's the way the commission goes, then the investigation is going to be deemed completed, I would suspect. And then at that point, I do believe that there's going to be requests, I would suspect there's going to be requests for this information, and I would hope that you could work with your firm and our city clerk to have whatever information you have turned over to the clerk as far as public records go. I assume that that's the approach that was going to be taken. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor. The only caveat I would say is the documents that we received from the city. So I'm trying to recall offhand if there was anything that we collected outside of that. I don't recall anything offhand that was not provided to us by the city.
All righty.
Okay.
Well, that'll be something, Mr. Delakis, you can ask your,
Again, if there are documents that if Mr. Delakis gave us some, I just don't recall offhand. But
Okay.
if we have them, we'll do that. I know 99% was, if
All right.
Mr. Delakis gave us some,
all
we'll do
all
that.
I'm saying is that there is going to be requests for information, and we need to somehow address that. And I'm saying that tonight because it may be a timely issue that may not be consistent with what would be considered responsive for public records request. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that we don't hold whatever we don't have the list of what you reviewed. I guess that's the other part of it. That's not in the report. So we just need to kind of get together, put our heads together, and get that resolved.
We're happy to cooperate, whatever you need. Okay.
All right. There's a couple of things that I had. One refers to finding 3. Was there a violation of the Florida Bar Rules of Professional Conduct? And I've got a number of questions, but I'm not going to deal with all of them this evening. But this one, I want to actually ask you and your team there some questions. If you go to page, in the findings, page 3, it says that the rules do not bar all communications between outside attorneys and city employees merely because the city retains a city attorney. Rather, only a matter that has been referred to the city attorney triggers an outside attorney's responsibility to seek permission from the city attorney before communicating with city employees on the matter. Then it says here, the city attorney contract, which is the contract with Trask Dagnall from the period when the 2019 ordinances were drafted, states that the city attorney's duties include handling all inquiries from the Board of Commissioners and the city staff. And the contract does not apply to all legal matters, which, that's one of the things that I would like to probably have as a 6th recommendation, that we need to address that sort of thing to kind of close that loophole. But the city attorney's representation is limited to matters referred to the city attorney. Neither Ordinance 2019-02 nor Ordinance 2019-03 was referred to the city attorney. We referred to the contract, now we're referring to a city attorney. Who are you referring to as the city attorney?
It was the Trask Dagnall firm at the time.
The Trask Dagnall firm?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting, because in the next step, in regards to the contract, it says that the city, this is the contract, the Trask Dagnall contract, the city retains the firm to perform all services of the city attorney as set forth in the charter and ordinances of the city in this agreement. And then I think the part that you were referring to, it says the general work of the city attorney shall include all duties of the city attorney, including but not limited to attending meetings of the Board of Commissioners, handling all inquiries. That's I think the line that the section that you're talking about, from the Board of Commissioners and the city staff, and says all services performed by the firm for the city as the city attorney. So the firm is the city attorney, or at least the attorneys that comprise the law firm are city attorneys, and they're used in various functions here at the City Hall. And then it goes on to on January 25th, page 9 of the report, your summary, it says that the Morgan Group's attorneys proposed new language for ordinance 2019-03. And it says the then planning director sought advice from the city attorney assigned to the P&Z board as to whether the new language would need to be re-advertised and re-noticed, being brought before the P&Z board, and that the city attorney reviewed the proposed changes and found that the revised language was significant enough to warrant pulling the ordinance from the January 28th, 2019 P&Z board meeting. Based on your language, the city attorney would not have known that the language was, of the ordinance was significantly different unless the city attorney had seen the original language, and which means that the ordinance had been referred to the city attorney, which triggers that reference to the board of the rules, which when you look at it from that perspective, it may have not been the person that sits here at commission meetings, but certainly it's a city attorney that sits at the P&Z board meetings. And when you look at that, I think that if you go back to the original statement, that no, of the finding number 3, no, we did not find any evidence of a violation of the Florida Rules of Professional Conduct when the city attorney was not present for or copied on every communication between city planning staff and Morgan Group's attorneys. It seems to me in this particular case, the contract said that the ordinances were not referred to the city attorney, but in fact, when it got to the P&Z board, it was referred to the city attorney, maybe a different person, but nevertheless, it's still Trask Dagnall. And I think that puts that in a slightly different light than just a carte blanche, that those two ordinances are not referred to the city attorney. It seems to me that for the city attorney to have known that there was a difference, they would have had access to that. And I would suspect, again, it's not in the report, that perhaps the then P&Z board director may have made it known who the new language was coming from. And again, I don't see that there was any information that was provided to you of whether there was any request made to communicate with the city staff, given that that outside attorney knew that the city staff was being represented on this particular item, consistent with what the contract said. I'm not sure whether, there is something that you would like to offer in addition to that, but that seems to be a little bit different than how I read your finding.
So let me see if I can clarify it a little bit. We did not find that the matter was referred to the city attorney. So the substance, and I think it's really a question of substance and procedure. The P&Z lawyer, the outside lawyer who was with Trask Dagnall, reviewed the language of the ordinance for procedure. So that lawyer was not asked to review the substance of the language, meaning are these changes correct, or what was not asked about the legal impact of the changes. The question was only procedurally, does this have to be renoticed? Do these have to be renoticed? And I think that's really the difference. And there is a difference between having a matter referred, meaning does a Trask Dagnall attorney have to be on the phone when an outside lawyer is dealing with the city staff, versus procedurally, here's the difference in the changes of the language that we are going to propose to go before the P&Z and then ultimately the Board of Commissioners. Are these changes significant enough procedurally to warrant the renoticing? And that's the difference that we found.
Okay. And the one thing I do want to state for the record is that I know that there's a lot of things that don't seem right to people and things like that, but you reviewed the information based on legal matters, primarily state statutes and whatever else laws or ordinances were in place, not whether they sounded right or anything like that.
That's correct. And we also interviewed the lawyer from Trask-Dagenhall who
Right.
had that matter noticed, and we interviewed city staff who asked the lawyer to procedurally, should this be renoticed or not? That is not referring the matter. That's a procedural question.
Well, that gets back to, again, what I was stating, that there needs to be some work done to harmonize attorney contracts with our charter and our administrative section of the ordinances, and also the basically those other legal matters that you referred to that were not included in the contract. So that's something that needs to be done. The other item that I had was actually two comments. One was generalization that was made on page 15. The report was very narrow, and I appreciate that. That's what we had asked for. That's what we'd agreed to. But on page 15, it says, according to witnesses, the city operates with a small town feel. There is a finite number of influential players in the Tarpon Springs development community, and those players are known across the city. City planning staff explained that they have been and remain vigilant in applying the development standards evenly across all developers and applicants, because any special treatment would be quickly broadcast throughout the city, undermining the city's planning and zoning department's authority and effectiveness. I'm not sure why that particular generalization would be in this report. I mean, did you confirm this?
So this is not us editorializing at all. This came directly from witnesses. More than one witness told us that this is the way the planning and city staff work. And I will say, city staff, first of all, they all cooperated with us, number one. Number two, we're lucky, Tarpon Springs is lucky to have such a sophisticated city staff, particularly in the planning and development arena. And I think that came across very clearly in our interviews. And they answered all our questions without hesitation. But this is sort of a summary of what multiple witnesses from the planning staff told us.
Right. The only thing I was mentioning was that we basically told the Morgan Group representatives that we've treated them the same as everyone else, and they did a public records request on all the other projects that maybe are similar to the Anclote Harbor Apartments project. And I don't know whether you looked to it further other than accepting what was stated by the witnesses. Is that pretty much it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If we took into account what the witnesses told us, correct.
All right. And then the other item is on page 20. When asked why the Morgan Group was not disclosed during this discussion as a potential beneficiary, witnesses explained that the Morgan Group was not an applicant at the time of this discussion, and the development concepts for the Anclote Harbor Apartment project had not been progressed to the stage where the Morgan Group had finalized the development option. Those witnesses believe that this expanded negotiation power would benefit the city by encouraging complex development projects to consider Tarpon Springs as a potential project location, thus aligning with the then BOC's pro-development pro-development vision. There's two parts. Again, there's a kind of an assumption that the previous board, I guess at the time that these ordinances were being considered, was a pro-development vision. I mean, I would say that would be something that would maybe had a kind of a view in the town, but I don't know that each of the commissioners at that time would have agreed with that. Of course, if you don't talk to them, you're not going to be able to get that sense from them. So I think that's a generalization. And then the other thing that kind of bothers me a little bit is that this, in particular, these witnesses believe that this expanded negotiation power would benefit the city by encouraging complex development projects to consider Tarpon Springs as a potential project location. That's a policy matter. That's not within the purview of the staff to kind of use that statement to reinforce why information was not promulgated. And that's the thing that troubles me. And there's a clear demarcation between the city commission, who are the policymakers, and the city staff, who are the implementers. And I don't know that there was any kind of discussion with regard to do whatever you can to bring anybody here, and then you know, and basically don't worry about whether it's a policy or not, just do it. I think that's a disconnect between the commission as the policymakers and the staff, who should be policy implementers, not, as you're seeing here, the witnesses are believing that that is that is a good policy to have. So that was just some observations I wanted to make. There's no really response that you needed to have on that one. And that's all. I have got other questions, but I'm going to go to I'm not going to ask those tonight. I'm going to go to the rest of the commission. I'm going to go right down the line. Vice Mayor Lunt, do you have anything?
I think for the most part, you've already delved into the same things that I was going to pick out of this. I have one general question, and it's really not for Mr. It's stated in here that neither of these ordinances were referred to the city attorney.
Say it again.
I said, it's said within this document that neither of the ordinances in question were referred to.
Who, would you like to have someone address that, or?
Were referred to this, yeah, I haven't finished the question. Is this common? Isn't it commonplace for us to submit ordinances to our legal staff to make sure that they?
City Manager LaCourse, do you have an answer to that?
Again, a lot depends on the service. I don't know which one this refers to. I'm sure with their questioning and stuff, they'll be a better answer it than I am.
Oh, okay, then this is a policy issue for us to take up later then maybe.
And you're right. I mean, in the old days, our city attorney at that time used to insist that they sign the ordinance to form. In other words, that it complied with the form of an ordinance. There was always a discussion of whether he really needed to do that or not. But that was a discussion 25 years ago. I don't know. I've never gotten into that depth between the staff and the attorneys, and kind of from a policy or procedural matter, whether that's done. But that is something that we need to discuss in the future. So.
The comment I want to make is I always thought that our ordinances were passed by our lawyers as a matter of rote, just to make sure that they were legal.
Right.
And if that's common practice, I'm just wondering why it wasn't done in these cases, if it in fact wasn't done.
That gets back to that finding number 3, that if it's
Yes.
not referred to, okay, got it. Nothing else? Commissioner Eisner?
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing I wanted to ask was something similar to what the mayor had here, because I do want to read the agreement between Trask and ourselves, because I was a little confused when I read that, you know, your response to it, because it says clearly, and I highlighted this, but not limited to in his contract. So that broadens everything. So he is, or the Trask attorney is liable to anything. It says it's not limited to just attending meetings of the Board of Commissioners, handling all inquiries from the Board of Commissioners, which is true, and the city staff, which there's many requests, and conducting all necessary research, preparing opinions, reviewing and drafting ordinances, resolutions and contracts, preparing development agreements, and processing administrative fine and lien settlement requests. Nowhere in there does it say that the Trask Dagenalt is to count on outside attorneys who are presenting development agreements to do his job. And nowhere in there, and I'm just looking at this saying, how could you not acknowledge that? So that would be something. I don't know if you want to answer these as I go. It's just, I just don't see it. And the worst part is he wrote the contract. And so, I mean, you can write any contract you want and then live by it. But this is his words, or whoever drafted it. I know he signed it on page 3. So that's question 1. Do you want me just to go through, or?
It may be easier just to do them one by one so we don't get lost here. You know, we obviously read that differently. I think the support's in our report. You may read it one way, we read it another way, not only based on the contract, but our outside research also. And I don't have anything else to say other than what's in our report.
Okay. Well, the first part of it says the firm shall be paid an annual retainer of $72,000. What's that for? I mean, I know I'm not asking you to answer me that, but what is it for? I mean, it's a retainer. Do you work for the city? You don't work for the city. You can't expect the 5 commissioners to know this. You can't expect our staff to be attorneys. You know, one of the big things that we spoke about, at least when I was running for office, was that we had 2 attorneys, 1 or 2 attorneys working for the Morgan Group who were dealing with staff members who knew code, you know, and knew our ordinances and knew our land development code, but they're not attorneys. And I'm still trying to scratch my head of why that was left in the hands of, or I should say, not left in our own attorney's hands who's working for us. So I don't understand how that is not considered negligent, if I could use that word. I don't know. So that's a comment. So I have a list of questions here that when I was reading through your report, and I feel for you because I know most of the key players that had a great deal of information all refused to speak to you. And so it's very hard for you to do this, but some of this was a quasi-judicial hearing. And there were times during these quasi-judicial hearings, and I was here for them all, 300 pages plus was dumped onto the desk of the Board of Commissioners at 3 o'clock. And when I later spoke with the Trask Dagenalt, mostly it was Tom Trask, he said it's legal. And I understand it's legal. But, you know, in his contract, it's advice. You're supposed to give advice. And it could have been tabled. It could have been sent back to the Planning and Zoning Board for review, because it was stuff that not only did the Planning and Zoning Board, who's sitting next to me at the time, Commissioner Koulianis was on it, he never got to see any of that. And the Board of Commissioners did not, at 3 o'clock, have any time to read any of that stuff. So that's a question that I have, because I know you've given them, and I mean across the board, you found no evidence. I don't know if this classifies as evidence, but it concerns me that all of these things were there. I think we spoke about it when we, because I have what we spoke about. So one of the questions I have is why did Tom Trask not table this and allow it to continue? So then we have a situation that when these quasi-judicial hearings were being held, since I sat on a board of, the Board of Adjustment for 6.5 years, my ears are tuned to hearing findings of fact. The lawyer repeats it at every single hearing. And they repeated it at that hearing as well. And there was only one commissioner who spoke about findings of fact, and that was, at the time, Commissioner Costa-Vaticiotis. Everybody else really didn't give a reason for why they made the decision. So my question to you would be, how is it a valid decision when people don't make findings of fact? That's would be the question I would ask.
So, I'm not sure if you mean that sort of generally or specifically.
Well, it's both.
mean-
It's generally, but it's also specifically because I was here for it and I didn't hear it. So, to make a decision, yeah, I'll go along with that decision. I wouldn't do that. I couldn't do that. I would have to give you a reason of why I'm making the decision. And let me follow it up. The first go-around, there was X amount of information done.
But can I answer it like this? Let me answer it like this. I think the best way to do it is, so one of the recommendations that we made was to provide education, not only to the Planning and Zoning Board, but also to the Board of Commissioners, right? And I think you asked a question, why could somebody not say that, or how could this be legal? And I think that's one of the reasons, among others, that we made that recommendation, right? So all the board members, whether Planning and Zoning, or the Board of Commissioners, and again, our scope has been mentioned a couple times, was really limited, would be able to deal with that sort of issue, right? Because that, for us, I think was outside, the specific question you're asking me is outside, certainly outside the scope of what we did,
Sure.
right?
Okay.
But I think what we wanted to do in a wholesome way was take these other, they're not ancillary issues, but ancillary pieces, right? And try to make suggestions how we think, or for your consideration, ways to educate the folks that are volunteering their time and serving on these committees, and how that would benefit not only you all, but the city as a whole.
So one of the first go-around, there was very little information given to the Planning and Zoning Board, and they voted, I think it was 6-1 to approve. But when more information came about, the vote went the opposite way. So with the vote going the opposite way, that would be my really, going back to my question, when you have an advisory board giving you a 6-1 no, 6 no's, 1 yes, I would think it really would scratch the back of my brain to find out why nobody gave findings of fact. So, again, I know that you gave this report, but these are, when I read your report, these are the things that I jotted down and said, how come we didn't delve into that to find out more? But I understand. When the question was asked of the board, did anybody have any ex parte communication with anybody that was in these emails? As I remember it like it was yesterday, there was only, everybody admitted that they had received a call from John Terrapini, but only one person actually spoke about, one commissioner actually spoke about what he spoke about, and it was to deny any further conversation. It was to say, hey, we're gonna talk about this on the dais. Everybody else didn't say a word. So again, these were things that perk up my antennae to say what was said, what wasn't said. And the person was our current mayor who did explain that. So again, these were questions that I have, and I'll just go through There was an email in here that spoke about an offer made to the FDOT by one of the owners of Morgan Group, Camille Salam, and he wanted to move this process along quicker with an offer of funds, of money. And in there, he specifically stated, not a lot of money, just money. I don't know what his definition of a lot of money is. I don't know what a little money is. But words like that concern me. And when I hear words like that, I have to say, is that evidence? What was he meaning by it? I know he didn't want to speak to you as well, but you have to admit that it's concerning email. I don't know how you want to answer me with it. It's
Oh,
just.
is that a question? Okay, so let's see. So, look, there were folks that spoke to us, and there were folks who declined, and that was within their right to do so. We don't have subpoena power. We could not force testimony. But we did reach out to who we thought were the most important folks that we wanted to talk to. And for the ones who declined, do we wish we could have spoken to them? I think so, yes, of course, right? Because that would have given us, more context as to some of these emails. So I don't know how you want me to answer that, but that's what I would say generally about folks who declined to talk to us. We wish we could have spoken to them. We would have asked them. We think we would have gotten some more context. That's
I know, I
Right.
understand.
yeah.
You're limited by, who you spoke to and who refused to speak. It's a very interesting concept. Yet, we heard tonight a letter that came in that said that, I don't know, I have hatred towards this one person, which I don't. The only thing I did was I read an email that he wrote, and he wrote it as and signed it as the vice mayor of Tarpon Springs, and that he had met with the developer, and his partner's family was the one who did the presentation. So, and everybody else in that group who didn't want to speak to you also had emails in there. So, I'm just curious, did you notice if there was any declaration of ex parte communication? Could you have gone back and looked at the next meeting that this vice mayor had and asked if he did declare that he spoke with, or that somebody spoke with, or was there a breakage of sunshine? I mean, those are the kind of things that I would have thought you could have asked. And I'm just being perfectly honest and straightforward with you.
Are you saying could have asked folks who declined to speak to us?
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
done more research into finding out, because everything we do is taped. What I'm saying right now is being taped. So you could easily go back and see, did he say it or did he not? I didn't see anything on that.
So, I will tell you, we reviewed hours and hours
I know.
and hours of videotape, and I think if we thought that something was significant enough to put in our report and would have made a difference one way or the other, we did that. So,
Okay. There was, like I said, these are just bullet points that I put in here. I'm not going to refer to your report. There was a letter from Heather, who was our ex-P&Z, giving Townsend Terrapini a credit letter. Did you look into that at all? I don't know, it's a question I'm gonna eventually have to ask Mark if we do give out credit letters, because I don't have a credit letter. I would like one, but I don't have a credit
yeah,
letter.
so again, I think the scope of our investigation
I
was
got
really
you.
narrow. I mean, I know that, there's a lot of ancillary issues, and I suppose if we had unlimited time to do this, like a lot of time, I guess, we could have done that. But we really focused on what was in the resolution, and I guess I would just refer you to that, because those are really the issues that we focused on and tried to answer the best we could, given the witnesses, the documents, the video, and our outside research.
There's also another gentleman who was, I think, prevalent here when this was all going on, or maybe, I don't have a timeline on him. His name is Rodney Chapman. And I was curious why you didn't interview Rodney Chapman as well. He's currently on Forward Pinellas, and he was, I would have to ask Mark this, but I know he was somewhat involved in this as well.
So I think there were a lot of people that were somewhat involved or tangentially involved in these issues. Again, we had to do what we thought was necessary, the folks that had the most information, the folks that were most relevant, and even in the individuals that we did interview, there was, of course, some, redundant testimony. But I think if we thought that that individual would have had some specialized knowledge or some specialized information that we couldn't have gotten from anywhere else, we would have done that. We very carefully and methodically went through individuals who we wanted to interview, and that's how we got to the list, both the ones that we requested and did cooperate with us and the ones that declined. So that's sort of that was the process.
So I want to compliment you for speaking with Jacob Carr, Commissioner, past Commissioner. But one of his also emails in here was on June 10th, 2019, and he wanted to know in that email about this Morgan Group. Did he speak about any knowledge? Because he sent, I think, the letter to Karen Lemons, and he was like investigating. So we have now probably 3 commissioners who know about a development that is not been announced yet. So again, these were things of why you got hired, because they make anybody at least concerned or thinking about what went on here. I don't know. I don't have the answer. Nobody wants to speak about it, but it's still going to make me ask the question. And did he speak about that? Are you able to speak about what he said?
So, so again, I mean, I don't have notes. I don't know that I took any notes from Commissioner Carr, but I will tell you again, if it would have been significant enough, it would have been in the report. I mean, what's in the report is what our findings are. I mean, we, as I think I mentioned when I first got up, we don't have any findings that are not in the report. We don't have any, evidence to support those findings that's not in the report. That's not how we operate.
Okay. I have one final question. I shouldn't say that I have many more, but I'm going to refrain. There was one email also in there where Heather, our prior Planning and Zoning Board lead person, offered Ed Armstrong an idea. That was my New York idea. It's got an R in it. Give the city, she offered to, instead of us charging them an impact fee, she asked that we can offer the city, in her words, a worthless piece of land that the city can take in preference to paying an impact fee. So my question, of course, is who is she working for? Here's a person who's working for the city, and you're working with an attorney that's doing a development. And these were honestly questions that I asked Tom Trask. And, I don't get straight answers, and I like straight answers because I ask straight questions. I'd rather you say, I don't want to answer, than not answering. When I see a comment like that, that goes right back to the offering of funds. So these were all things that I kind of read through, and I don't want to keep you here all night at your rate of pay, all joking aside. but-
We appreciate that.
These are all things that when I read your report, I understand what your limits are, but I feel like all of these questions were not answered, and I would like them answered. I don't know
So,
how.
no, look, we understand. There's a lot of pieces to this. We prepared our report and we focused our investigation based on the resolution, right, that the Board of Commissioners passed. Ms. Erweiler did talk to us at length.
I know.
And so I don't know that it's helpful to take one piece, right? I understand what your question is and why you're asking it, but I think what we try to do in the report is not to take things out of context, right? And put it together as the entire view or along the entire timeline, which was a pretty tedious task to try to put that together. So Ms. Erweiler did cooperate with us. We spent a lot of time with her, frankly, talking about this and other issues. And, you know, from our perspective, you know, she followed the procedure that she was set to do. We thought she did her job.
But did she answer that question to you?
So again, I don't remember the back and forth.
I know.
We showed her a lot of emails. We spent a lot of time with her, I will tell you that. And I think the sum of her testimony and other witnesses, frankly, is sort of amalgamated in the report.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Commissioner Kulyas.
Mr. Schwartz, can you go over your credentials one more time, please?
Sure. So what exactly would you like to know?
Your experience with special counsel reports and just, you know, looking at charter and land development codes and just overall.
Sure. So I don't know what to tell you. So I've been with Carlton Field since 2005. I'm the head of our white collar government investigations group. We have, among our other attorneys, land use specialists, and we rely on them. My specialty is internal investigations.
Thank you, sir. And from this research, again, you were able, city staff did everything right from everything you saw and what you put in the report?
Correct. What's in our report is what our findings are and the evidence to support that.
And city staff was not pressured to push this project?
Right. That was in our report, correct.
Okay. And in your recommendations, can you briefly go over each of them? I want the public to be able to hear these recommendations and how they can help benefit us and people who haven't even read the report yet. And I would ask this board, whatever questions you have, get them all out tonight. I don't know how much longer this is gonna go for, but whatever questions you wanna ask, now's the time to ask them, get them out. That way, this is the forum to get the answers that we're looking for. So, can you go over that first recommendation, sir?
You just want me to read it?
Yes, sir.
So, first recommendation, the investigation revealed that current and former commissioners and former P&Z board members would like additional transparency related to when a developer's attorney or agency drafts or assists in drafting a proposed change to the LDC. We would recommend the city consider a mechanism to alert each member of the BOC when an outside party drafts or assists in drafting changes to the LDC. We believe this could be achieved with a single line item or checkbox in the staff report provided in board packets related to a proposed change. Alternatively, a narrative description in the staff report of the involvement of an outside party or its agent, as well as any potential benefit to that party, would provide greater transparency.
Okay, so these recommendations even applied to what this whole project and how it came out. Doesn't mean how the project was done was done wrong. It was actually done correct. These are just recommendations to help improve our process and what this board is looking for.
That's right, frankly, based on information or concerns that we heard from witnesses.
Okay. Can you go over number 2, recommendation, sir?
Current BOC members expressed a wish for greater transparency into meetings between developers and city staff. As such, the city may wish to consider implementing an online or electronic meeting request process that tracks the parties seeking informal pre-development meetings or pre-application meetings, as well as any additional information the city considers relevant to increase transparency into these meetings. We encourage a thorough analysis of the pros and cons of such a process.
So wouldn't that, somewhat in detail, pretty much let the Board of Commissioners know that there may be some type of project on the horizon or you know, that could be part of the application process in the future?
That's right. There are municipalities, other municipalities, that that take that stance or that have implemented something similar to that, and it was our recommendation that the Board of Commissioners may want to consider doing that if that's an interest.
Okay. Can you go over number 3, sir?
The city may also consider preparing an easily accessed developer handbook to guide developers through the informal pre-development process, the pre-application process, and the purpose of communicating with city planning and zoning staff prior to submitting a project application. A discussion of the city's standards and expectations as to transparency surrounding these conversations may also be warranted as part of that guidebook.
Do you see anything like that with other cities?
There are other municipalities that have implemented a similar object or piece like that, which is why if the Board of Commissioners would like to, that's one thing that could be done and could be considered and could be done.
Okay, sir. And number 4, please.
The city should review its training process and materials for its P&Z Board and Board of Commissioners. This review should ensure board members receive proper training regarding the city's land use processes, related standards, and the board's roles within that process. This review should consider whether this training should include an abbreviated land use course that provides a basic understanding of the board's roles and duties and their relationship to neighboring municipalities, regional planning entities, counties, and state agencies to understand the board's unique functions within the overall system. Training should teach members the rules for approvals, public participation, and ethics. Training should also ensure that local board members are familiar with any new development review process and their roles in it. Training for individual board members should be tracked and renewed regularly with certifications as to each serving board member who completed the training program satisfactorily.
Okay. Do you see this happening in other cities with planning and zoning boards and including Board of Commissioners or council members?
We do, and not only that, I mean, I think just tonight, I think you heard that this recommendation would be appreciated by a member of the public who was formerly on the P&Z board. And so even before talking to you all, I think it's already been sort of validated.
Okay. And the last recommendation, sir?
The city may want to consider a review of whether it consents to allow outside attorney communications with city employees without city attorney involvement. Our understanding is that such communications are currently prohibited.
Okay, so even with this recommendation, from your findings, the Trask and Daniel firm did in fact correctly work within their scope and their duties within the agreement with the city of Tarpon Springs and the charter.
So, yes, we talked about this a little bit tonight about whether the matter's been referred or not. We thought that we found, not only based on our interviews, but also extensive research regarding the Florida bar rules and case law, that the way this matter was handled, this particular matter was handled, was done correctly.
Thank you, sir. And so, I'm just going to make a couple comments. You know, we understand the many years that it's took to get to this point, this finding. my biggest concern was being able to see if there was enough information, not to get anyone in trouble, and I put that on the record plenty of times, but just to see if there was a revote possible. And so we understood that that was not going to be the case. So the best scenario was for us to see how we could implement some changes or recommendations to our processes to make sure we take care of our town. And this board's already taken some necessary steps and some land development codes that have been changed, or if you want to call it reversed, to take care of our town and future development projects. And I just think it's important that elected officials, because smart growth is a different perception for each individual up here, you know, and so it's important to have officials up here who agree with what your idea of smart growth is, to just take care of town, because that's what we're here to learn about. And you know, I was quoted initially as, you know, if we don't find anything with this report, we want another one. And I just wanted to clarify again, that's not the case. I think we found ways to shore up the development process, make sure our town doesn't become heavily dense in certain areas of town, and look towards mixed use, towards certain downtown trail areas, other areas of walkability. And, you know, I'd like for us to move forward with this tonight. It's, you know, we've gone enough with it. I think the city's learned a lot. I think the residents have learned a lot when they understand, when they see land development codes being changed or amended in the future and what they're related to. The residents will be able to speak out more, and there will be a board up here that'll be held accountable or have to be transparent, just like anyone else. So we did in fact learn a lot. There are a lot of recommendations that we can use to help the future of the city and to make sure we preserve that feeling that we have here. And so I'd like to accept the report tonight, move forward, and at some point have a discussion to try to implement these recommendations to our development process or any other process within the city to help it out. Thank you all.
Okay. Commissioner Kulianis.
Good evening, Mr. Schwartz.
Good evening.
So I have some questions that I think are more overview questions, but and I've separated these into 3 sections. So first is our staff. In finding number 1, you state that we found no evidence of special treatment offered or provided to the Morgan Group or its agents concerning its Anclote Harbor apartment project's application. So 1, in summary, and in very, again, broad summary, what did you do in your investigation to come to this conclusion?
We spoke to, I think, all members of, all relevant staff members, planning staff from the city of Tarpon. We analyzed documents of emails between city planning staff and the Morgan Group, and we, you know, formulate our questions, many of our questions based on that.
Okay, thank you. Does this conclusion include the actions of the city manager, both planning directors, Ms. Vincent and Ms. Erwaller, and the entire staff of the planning and zoning department?
It does. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Therefore, in your opinion, our city administration and staff are exonerated from any alleged wrongdoing regarding their handling of the process in reference to the Anclote Harbor project.
So I'm not going to make characterizations. I would say what's in our report is in our report, but we didn't find any evidence of this first finding of any outside influence. Again, I mean, I mentioned, I think the staff is a very sophisticated staff. I think they're very good. We found that they followed the procedures that they were supposed to follow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's talk about the process. Are you aware of the findings or rulings of the 3-judge panel of the Circuit Court? Are you aware of the findings of that three-judge panel of the circuit court.
So I don't think that that was part of the scope of what we looked into. I don't remember looking at that. Yeah, that wasn't part of our scope. I'm just confirming.
Jared, are you aware that there was that it had gone, that the issue of the process had gone to the circuit court?
So I know generally that that's happened. I haven't, like I said, we haven't reviewed it. I know generally, but I don't know any substance about it.
Okay, so these questions are going to be rhetorical since you haven't,
So I can take a couple minutes off then.
you can just
All right, thanks.
listen. Okay. So are you aware that each of those three judges individually found that the project was properly approved by the city and followed the land development code and was consistent with the comprehensive plan? Are you aware of the findings or ruling of the Second District Court of Appeals?
So again, that really wasn't part of what we were focused on. We were focusing what happened at the time, right?
Okay, thank you. Here's another rhetorical question. Are you aware that they upheld the findings of the circuit court in determining that the approval of the project as being appropriate? Did any of these, and this might be rhetorical as well, did any of these bodies find any errors in transparency or process that the city operated inappropriately or violated the standards of due process of a properly administered quasi-judicial hearing? So that's rhetorical. Again, furthermore, did your firm find any errors in transparency or process that the city operated inappropriately or violated the standards of due process of a properly administered quasi-judicial hearing?
So if we would have found something like that, it would have been in the report.
So in all of the questioning of witnesses, watching of all the videos, and reading documents, you did not find anything where you thought that our quasi-judicial hearings were flawed?
If we would have, again, within the scope of what we were asked to do, if we would have found something like that, it would be in the,
Okay, so you found no evidence of that within the scope?
So I'm not trying to, I just want to make sure we're clear on this. Again, our scope was very, very narrow. We wanted to follow the resolution. We think we did that. To the extent that your question is referencing the resolution and our findings based on that, if we would have found some sort of wrongdoing, that would be in the report. If your question is asking about anything outside of that, that's not something that we looked into. I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
Okay.
Given the findings of these courts, again, this may be rhetorical, in all the work you did in this engagement, did you find any evidence that would have led you to believe that these judicial bodies ruled in error? So, no, you don't have to answer that one.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's talk about individuals. Are you aware of the vote of the Planning and Zoning Board on November 16th, 2020, whereby the board voted in favor of the project 4-1? Are you aware of that vote?
Yeah, so I don't want to cut your question short. I don't know how much it moves the process along to do these individual pieces. I think our reports, right, stands. It says everything that we found or didn't find, frankly. So again, I'm not trying to cut you off, but I'm just not sure.
I won't let you cut me off.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm not sure how much it benefits the process
All
to
right,
do that.
that's all right.
So,
You did what you did.
Okay.
Okay. Just FYI, I was the sole no vote on that 4-1 vote.
Look, if it happened during the time that we were asked to look into, 2017 through
We discussed that.
Yeah,
right?
through 2022, based on the resolution that the board passed, we know about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in your work, you knew about the processes, and you knew about the vote. I know you knew, we talked.
Knew about it. We
Yeah,
looked at
I don't
we
want to
looked
get
at the
into our,
recordings.
I
we
don't want to
looked
get
at-
into our conversation that was private.
We're not
but-
going to talk about
okay,
that.
We're not
We
talking
look-
about that.
We looked at the recordings, we looked at the transcripts that were available.
Okay.
So again, I don't want to.
These
If
aren't,
you have
these
another
aren't,
question-
these aren't I gotcha questions.
No, I know,
okay,
I'm just,
you know.
I'm just telling you, yeah, we knew about it.
All right,
If
you
it
knew
happened
about it,
within our
okay.
scope, we knew about it.
So, are you aware the following members voted in favor of the project? George Andriotis, Richard Morgan, Mike Kouskoudis, and Merle Seaman. Did you find any evidence that any of these members voted for the project for reasons other than they believed the project had merit and/or was consistent with the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan of the city of Tarpon Springs? So in all your work, did you find that anyone, that you found any evidence that anyone voted outside of either the merit of the project or whether it met the standards? Did you find any evidence that of anyone's motive, that they voted for that for any reason other than that?
Okay, let's see, so I'm not sure, I think I know what you're talking about. Again, I guess I would say our focus was really limited
Right.
to what was in the resolution. I think what you're asking is, I think that's outside of it. But again, if it was something important that happened during the time, and it would have affected our report, it'd be
Well,
in there.
Wasn't part of you were looking at how this Anclote Harbor project happened, what happened. If you were to find evidence of corruption, because you talk about in your findings, you talk about undue pressure, right? You talk about pressure. Let me go back to your findings here. Okay. So in your findings here, did employees or agents of the Morgan Group exert inappropriate pressure? So you use the word pressure, right? On city planning or zoning staff. And then you said, we found no evidence of outsized influence by employees or agents of the Morgan Group over city planning staff to advance or recommend the project. We found no evidence of special treatment offered or, and furthermore. So you talk about pressure. So that's what this question's asking. Did, other than what a person would make a decision for, you found no evidence that there was pressure on any of these parties to vote either no or yes, correct? You found no evidence of that.
Right, right,
That's all I'm asking.
okay,
Okay.
right.
Because you talk about pressure.
Right, if we would have found that, it would have been in the report.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Regardless of whether you spoke with John Terrapini, Cindy Terrapini, Ed Armstrong, and other parties listed in your report, would you concur that the approval of the project came down to the vote of 3 members of the Board of Commissioners who voted for the project, correct? Wouldn't the approval of the project come down to those 3 people?
So again, this is stuff that, if it wasn't in our, if we weren't asked, I mean, look, here's the thing. We were asked to look into the communication interplay between the Tarpon Springs public officers, employees, and its agents, and the Morgan Group and its agents between 2017, fall of 2017, spring of 2022, related to the Anclote Harbor apartment project.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
I mean, they are really very specific.
Right.
Right, and they're crafted to do that. So you're asking me questions that are really outside of that. I mean,
What I'm asking you is, in all the work, you did a lot of work. You talked to a lot of
Yes.
people. You read a lot of stuff.
Yes.
In that, did you see any? Would you not agree that the approval of the project? I don't care if you agree or not. I'm just going to make the statement.
Okay.
The approval of the project came down to 3 people, correct?
yeah, I mean, look, I'm okay with, I mean, you have to do what you have to do if you want to make statements.
Yeah.
We weren't asked, we were not asked
Fine.
to look
But-
into
but
that.
you-
We were not
then-
asked to look into that. So if you want to talk about what we were asked to look into, I mean, and I think I'll probably tell you, if it's in the report, everything we found that is in the report. So that, I don't want to argue with you, but I just want to make sure.
I'm not taking it as arguing.
Okay, I can't, well,
All right.
okay. I can't really go outside. It's not really fair to go outside what we were asked to do.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll just make the statement that
Okay.
the vote came down to 3 people. Okay, I understand there were people you didn't speak to, but the vote came down to 3 people. Again, this is during the scope of your work. You did a lot of work. You did more work in investigating this than anybody has probably done, right?
That is probably true.
That is true, right?
I believe
So
that's true.
in all this stuff you're interviewing, in all this evidence you're going through, if you had found stuff, it would be in your report. If you found corruption, it would be in your report.
That's exactly right.
Exactly. So if you found corruption, if you found undue influence, if you found anything, it would have been in your report because you looked at 27,000 documents, you interviewed a whole bunch of people, you spent a lot of time, and I commend you. This is a great report because it tells us we have a good city. That's important. So, but let's go back. Okay, so it comes down to these 3 people. Therefore, did you receive or did you find any evidence that former Mayor Chris Alahouzes, Commissioner Connor Donovan, or Commissioner Jacob Carr voted for the project for any other reason than that they believed it had merit and or was compliant and consistent with the city's plan development code and the comprehensive plan? Did you find any evidence otherwise?
Is that a question or
Yeah, it's a question.
Okay. So, again, if we would have found it, would have been in the report.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did you, and again, I'm going to keep asking these. I apologize. 'Cause
That's okay.
just-
I'll
they're
probably have
written
the
down,
same
so I got to go
answer.
through them, So, did you receive any evidence that they were corrupted in any way to vote for the project? Did you find any evidence?
Can I say same answer?
Yeah.
So, right, no, but I mean, seriously, like, if we would have found any evidence of corruption, as you put it, we looked into that, any kickbacks, any quid pro quo, whatever it would have been.
Correct.
Right?
That's
it
it.
would be in the report, okay?
I-
I'm just
So
telling you, I just want to be
didn't find it, so
clear.
it's not in the report. I'm just.
Correct.
This is as much for you and I as it is for the citizens.
I
okay?
understand,
All right. Did you receive any tangible, detailed evidence of how purported corruption could have taken place?
Yeah, again, if we would have received that, it'd be in the report.
Okay. Did you see or hear of any tangible evidence? You'll like this one.
I like them all, actually.
Yeah. Did you see or hear of any tangible evidence in this engagement that as a former assistant state attorney, that's what you were, right?
Assistant U.S. Attorney.
Oh, it's better. Okay. Let me write that in there, U.S. attorney.
Assistant, by the way, not the U.S.
I have
Assistant U.S.
that's-
Attorney.
I have assistant. Let me restate it because it's even better. Did you see or hear of any tangible evidence in this engagement that as a former assistant U.S. attorney that would have caused you to take legal action in your former capacity?
Again, so I don't know that I would have put that in the report, but look, all our findings are in the report.
Okay, so as a former assistant U.S. attorney, you didn't see anything in all the evidence that you looked at that would have caused you to take legal action in that former capacity?
Okay, just to be clear, again, that is outside the scope, but look, again, same answer. Anything important would have been in the report.
So it wasn't there, you didn't find it. So I understand you spoke to former Commissioner Jacob Carr, correct?
Yes.
Says you did,
Yep.
okay. Did he offer you any other reason for voting for the project other than the merits of the project and or its consistency with the Land Development Code or Comprehensive Plan? Did he tell you that he voted for it for any other reason?
So I think that's been asked and answered, and I'm not going to get into individual.
Okay.
Right, we didn't
But
get into
if he-
yours, I'm not going to get
it
into
would
his
be in
either.
the report. Did you experience some Perry Mason moment when you, whereby Jacob Carr confessed to being corrupted to vote for the project?
I assume that that is rhetorical.
That's rhetorical.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So in your extensive legal experience of interviewing witnesses, and given what work you have done on this case, would you have expected to receive a confession of corruption had you spoken to Chris Alahousas or Connor Donovan? Would you have expected it?
So, is this rhetorical too?
It could be rhetorical.
let's
You can
do that.
answer if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
So in your opinion, as a result of your findings, and given the extensive amount of work you put into this engagement at a cost of $160,000 to the taxpayers of the city of Tarpon Springs, and if you were asked to do so, would you recommend, again, given the work you've done and what you found, would you recommend that any further use of city resources be used to pursue a finding that would differ from yours?
So the recommendations that we made are in the report. I think that's outside the scope of what we've been asked to do. I know what that's really up to you all. I think you all have to make that decision.
Okay, but
that's my recommendation.
No, but did you, in the limitations of your scope, and as you were doing this work, was there more, do you feel you could have gone farther to disclose or to uncover any inappropriateness of either the process of how the staff, the city worked with this within this project, or that there could have been some more nefarious motives of these, again, these three guys who voted? Because it really comes down to them three, the three, okay? And did you, in your work, did you find that, gosh, if we had a larger scope, we really could have found more things? Do you believe that?
Okay, let's see. So,
or do you feel that you within the scope of what you were given and what you did, that you felt comfortable that you had determined that the process was fair and appropriate, and that there was no undue influence, and the things that you found, you were comfortable with the amount of work you did and within the scope, that these findings would be the same whether you spent an extra 2 months doing this?
So we undertook and completed a very thorough investigation of this matter.
Okay.
And I've talked about how we've done that. Were there some folks I wish we could have spoken to? I do, that's true. Do I know if that would have changed any of our conclusions? I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know, because I didn't get a chance to talk to them.
All right.
Does that answer? I'm trying to
Yeah.
answer the
Yeah.
question.
You know, I welcome your recommendations of transparency. You know, there are, and we can learn things. You have experience with other municipalities and county governments and state governments, and you probably know how things work. Even my brother Tom in Hillsborough County, had given us some advice on more transparency at the early stages, like Commissioner Koulias was asking about, or you were discussing with him, to have more transparency early on in a process, especially in that 2017 meeting up in City Hall, if it had been recorded and made public in a more transparent and
And I think
easier
we
way.
made recommendations to address situations like that, if you all want
And
to
I think
consider
that's,
that.
no, and I commend you. I think, those are the things. Many of us would have liked a different result on this. Not necessarily your report, but that the Board of Commissioners would not have voted for this project. I voted no. I voted no twice. I suspect if had to do it again, I probably would vote no again. And my concern was traffic and safety, and I still, you know, it still bothers me to this day. But, you know, elections have consequences. The fellows who were on the board before saw merit in the project, thought it met the plan development code, the comprehensive plan. We found nothing in your work that there was any nefarious motivations of these commissioners and the mayor. And I just want that clear, and I think that's what's, I read in your thing, is in your report, and I think that it's, if anything, it should make us, I know some would be angry that it's not nailing these fellows, you know, it's not nailing these people, but that's, you know, in your discovery, that wasn't the motivation. It wasn't, you weren't playing I Gotcha. I don't think that we should be playing I Gotcha. We were just, let's find out what happened. And the fact that we can now look at our staff, our city manager, our planning director, and you even said how professional they were, you know, and we should be proud of them.
And I want to make, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to make sure that comes across, because not only are they professional, but we found them to be very sophisticated, particularly interpreting land development codes, right? And things that are important to the community. And I just want to make sure that comes across.
No, and I appreciate you saying that, and I read that in your report. It did come across to me, and I'm proud of them. And in some ways, they're old apologies, you know, because I think they went through a lot of disparagement, and you know, they were. But this report, when I read it, I thought, okay, we have a good city. And regardless of the vote and how that project went down, again, I disagreed with it, but it was fair and it was done right. Courts have ruled on it. You did your report. You said everything was cool. That's kind of where we are. So thank you. I want to just thank you. I think you did a service to our community, and that's the way I'm looking at this report. So
Thank you. We certainly appreciate it.
thank you very much.
Okay, city manager, of course, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Mr. Salzman. Let's wrap this up. So, Mr. Salzman, you don't have anything, correct? Okay.
No, Mayor.
Mr. Schwartz, I want to thank you and your team. You did what we asked you to do. I think your report is solid. I recognize it's based on the information and the interviews that you did have, and I understand some of your comments in that regard. I also very much appreciate the recommendations. I think they're self-explanatory, and I think that there's some additional work and details that we can add to it to even build on that. I also, again, the two biggest things that came out for me that was of value, one, that there was nothing that you found that would cause this project to come back to the commission for a revote or anything like that. That was very important. I think the point was made earlier that there wasn't any pursuit of any kind of wrongdoing, that this report would act as a means of being punitive towards anyone. And I think that you made that clear as well, that based on what you found, there's nothing there. And then the second part of that, in addition to the fact that you didn't find anything in your investigation that would lead to coming back to this commission, the biggest value to me was actually this need to harmonize the city attorney position in terms of a contract with what our charter says. Our charter says that it's basically the city attorney lists certain things. It doesn't make a distinction of whether that person's an employee or a contract, an attorney or attorneys under contract to the city. I think your point that our contract, the e-contract that was in place at that time, doesn't cover all legal matters. That's very troubling to me, because if there is an issue and it's demonstrated that it was outside of the contract, we've got a problem. And the other part of it as well, I just want to remind everybody, and many of the residents don't know, we do evaluations, performance evaluations for charter officials each year. And there is a city attorney performance evaluation that is largely based on that individual being a city employee, which they're not. In fact, there is no job description for a city attorney that we have here, just the contract. So for me, that's a big deal, and we need to do some work, and to me, that would be a sixth recommendation that I would like to, I'm not asking you to do it, I think it's a natural that we add that to your 5 recommendations when we get to that point. It was very much a pleasure in working with you and Carlton Fields. We picked your firm because you were nationally known, you had an outstanding reputation, and we felt that we needed that type of a firm in order to address the community's concerns. It's hard to make observations tonight based on what your findings are and go back to the time of when every meeting, it was the same thing about the Anclote Harbor project, this and that and that and this. And there was a lot of what I would call some issues with trust with city government that needed to be resolved, which I believe this report, I'm hoping that, of course, you never know, you've got the court of law, but then you've also got the court of public opinion as well, which is largely what we deal with up here. I'm hoping that that will reconcile a lot of people, and maybe we can move on with some other things that we need to do. I don't know what's going to happen with Anclote Harbor project. There's some other things that we're dealing with at the staff level in that regard, and there's some other legal matters that we're dealing with as well. But from the standpoint of your report, I very much appreciate and thank you for what you've done.
Thank you, Mayor. We appreciate it, and I can tell you, I know from Ken and Aaron, it's been our honor to serve the citizens of Tarpon Springs, and we hope that this report, and we spent a lot of time, put a lot of effort into it, did a lot of work. We hope that it does sort of help to heal the community.
In progress.
And give the community some closure.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Let me go down the line. Vice Mayor Lunt, do you have any closing comments or?
I wanted to thank you, and as well as Aaron and Ken. Can't hear you. I wanted to thank you for you and your team and all the work that they put into this. I know it was extensive, especially having to dredge through all those hours of video. I commiserate with you on that. So thank you. This is more of a statement to the general public. It's obvious that through this whole process that the developer worked the system. It was legal, it was perfectly acceptable, and that's what they're expected to do. They're expected to work the system that they're given. If we don't like the results, and some of us didn't like the results, I mean, a lot of people didn't like the results, then it's time to change the system. So we've already made some progress towards that. We have further work to do to tighten that system so it's more transparent, more honest, and gets the results that we want. And I think we're working towards that. It's really, really nice to hear that we have such an acceptable staff as far as planning and zoning and the other staff members that were involved, and I'm really glad to hear that. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Eisner.
Thank you, Mayor. Hope you don't take any offense to my questions, but
Not at all.
I have inquiring minds, so I do appreciate all the hard work. I enjoyed the meeting with you. I did agree with everything that you had. I also do believe that you were working with limited information and also limited parameters on what you needed to look into. I also am glad that it came out where there was confidence. I never had any doubt that it was not done correctly. I just more so think things were moved around in order to accommodate, and that's where my questioning came in. And I know that's a very hard thing, because when you have a prior board that's a development board versus having a board that we are now, I mean, it's the way things are, but I know it must have been very tough to deal with it all, and I do want to thank you. And I appreciate all of your hard work. I enjoyed chatting with you, and I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for what you did.
Thank you, Commissioner, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Kulyas.
Mr. Schwartz, thank your firm for the report. And I just want to clarify with everybody, majority of the residents wanted this report. This wasn't, you know, there was so much that was out there. I think it was beneficial for the city for clearing up staff, especially I used to be one of the biggest critics of staff as a private citizen, and being able to work with them and looking out, that they're looking out for our best interests. I'll be one of the first people to back up planning and staff. And so I'm happy that was cleared out. It was expensive, but everyone on this board wanted this report. And just like we had that one beginning meeting, we were all here in some form or another talking about how our interests, and we set the parameters for you to look into. So we can move forward. We can, you know, clear up a lot of the city staff, a lot of the assumptions about how they work with applications. And, you know, I'm thankful that this report can go forward. The residents can understand it, move forward, and we together as a city and a commission can implement some policies to take care of everything in the future, and just look to take care of our town. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Kulianis.
Yes. I think you said it most correctly when you said, I hope this helps you heal your city. This has been a extremely divisive project, and it has caused a lot of rancor. It obviously had a consequence of an election. You know, it's problematic sometimes when, you know, healthy skepticism, or skepticism is healthy, but when skepticism morphs into wholesale distrust and then into paranoia, it becomes problematic. And I think your report is brought us back to center, and I think it was an extremely useful project in the long term of our city, and I want to thank you. And you did an excellent job, and I commend you for it.
Thank you, Commissioner, appreciate it.
Okay. Let me just finish up the entire meeting. I would assume there's no other board comments from anyone concerning staff and board comments. And I just want to remind everybody, the executive meeting tomorrow night is at 5:45 upstairs in our corner conference room. Mr. Schwartz, thank you again, and thank you, Carlton Fields, and everything that you've done for us, so.
Thank you, Mayor, thank you, Board of Commissioners.
Okay. Meeting adjourned at 8:53.